Checkity check, check, check. Am I recording? Yeah. I think I might as well wait for one person to show up. Who knows if they will, though. Oh, two people showed up. That's super nice. Hello, everybody. Chris here, where we're just going to hang out in the middle of the day, most days, and just do something. Look at one of my many open tabs. I was in a hotel room the other day and in the perfect mood to do this. So I already kind of did most of this state of CSS survey, but there's so many thoughts on like every single question that comes up that I figured, oh, that sounds fun to do on a stream. So we'll just do that. Anyway, have you all taken this yet? I'd also like, if you do take it, encourage you to do it yourself, not like copy my answers or anything. Maybe that's very obvious, but I hope this doesn't like influence what you would put as the answer, I guess. I am kind of curious if somebody is watching and could say, like, when I see the preview of this in my little stupid app thing, it looks really like low quality. But if somebody's watching, does the browser window look crisp and high quality? I don't know. Feel free to let me know. Anyway, the state of CSS survey, obviously it's free to take, and I think they want your email address. I'm not sure if it's possible to take anonymously or not, but I'm happy to sign in and do it that way. This is the very first question. It's a lot of this like, never heard of it, used it. There's the three options, and then whether you liked it or not. So the first question is specifically not about grid, like it looks, but subgrid. I marked used it because I definitely have. Although it does make me wonder if I've used it in like something super production or not. So I remember before it existed, I was like, we need that. The situations would come up all the time where I needed subgrid, and then I didn't need it in the end. Kind of funny. It's also funny how they set up the columns, but then make the rows subgrid here. You're like, what are they doing? I feel like this snippet is weird. Snippet above is weird. Okay. Writing modes. I only put heard of it because I'm like, I don't know, I probably have typed it before, but I definitely have never built a site with a vertical writing mode like that. So I'm just going to put heard of it instead. Logical properties. Heck yeah, big fan. Been thinking more and more about them. In fact, I have this like idea in my mind about what would be fun, or like what's a good idea. When do you not use it, for one thing? When do you not use it? When's the right answer is to not use a logical property? And of course, there are some examples of that. And like, what if you even got those wrong? Like, what if in your mind, you automatically used logical properties all the time? Is that a net gain? And it's like, probably yes, but I wonder, would you ever impart any mistakes that make it not worth it? Is it worth it to always think nuanced about it? Or can you like just switch over to use them and it's a net gain? Not sure. Aspect ratio, heck yeah, I use it all the time. In fact, when I'm about to set width and height to the same number, I almost never do that anymore. I just rock the aspect ratio. Just a little chill thing to do, but of course it has many other use cases. Certainly the like slapping it on a YouTube video for a 16:9 and letting it still be fluid and stuff is just huge. Thank you so much, aspect ratio, for existing. I love it. Dynamic viewport units are very interesting. Yeah, this particular one right here and even on the body I use all the time. DVH just means like, oh, it's 100% high, but like I think it's like if there's browser Chrome opens in the way that it like dynamically responds to that, and the height becomes what you can see now, not what was it before the Chrome was there. I feel like that's a genius thing, and it's one of those things where I just have switched over. I just use DVH instead of VH all the time. There is DVW and DVI and DVB for the logical properties. That's a good example. I should be using DVI, right? But I don't. Anyway, I love that they exist, and I don't really know what DVW or DVI. Oh no, I got it wrong. I should be using DVB, block direction, right? Is there inline direction? Is there an example of browser Chrome like eating up from the left and the right? I'm not sure, but I love them, and I'm glad this exists because it does actually solve problems that you might not even be aware that it's solving. Range syntax is freaking beautiful. I've tried to switch over entirely in my mind to this. That's the idea that we're not using like min width is this. This would be hard to express. You'd have to have two conditions. You'd have to say min width is greater than 400 and max min width is less. I don't know. Now this reads so much better. It's saying the width is between 400 and 1,000. And having to express that in two different media queries with an and syntax is annoying. That's nice. But even just without this part, like just saying width is greater than 400 pixels, to me that reads better. But I feel like sometimes I write it and I get it wrong. And so it's not perfect yet. But I'll say that was a positive experience for sure. I like that syntax. I like that that exists. As far as I know, pretty good browser support, I think. Yeah. Anchor positioning, I say used it because I have written... I've played with it quite a number of times. Again, it's one of those features that I don't know that I've shipped it, especially because browser support is actually pretty limited on this one. So I'm almost sure, like it's not in CodePen, for example. And in fact, it was before Google I/O this year that even Google reached out and were like, maybe we could use CodePen as like a story of it. Like, is there a way you could use anchor positioning? And it wasn't anchor positioning specifically. They're like, just some new cool web feature that you could do the work to update to, and then we could kind of tell that story of web features. And I was thinking maybe, but this was the first one I looked into, and it had some bugs with our setup that I didn't like. And then the polyfill was there, but I was like, the polyfill didn't support the most latest syntax, and that felt not right to me. And anyway, we ended up not going through with it. But as a feature, I freaking love it. It's so good. So yeah, used it. I guess that counts for used it. I'll say positive experience. Heck yeah, it's beautiful experience. So container size queries. So this is, I guess you have to, the requirement is that you've set container and then you start using the container. Like that's fine. I feel like they're intentionally not trying to combine syntaxes here. They're trying to get you to focus on this. So they're using, I guess, the old school syntax there. So have I used this? Heck yeah, we are shipping these in production all over the place. Container queries is one of those ones to me that like, yeah, I do use them quite a bit. Have they replaced more than 50% of my media queries like I thought they would? Maybe not. But they are extremely useful and will continue to be and are absolutely amazing, and yay. So glad those exist. Style queries is a variant on them, I guess, but it's almost weird that we use the same @container syntax, but I guess it makes sense a little bit. You don't need to set container to use a container style query, though. This is just saying on the nearest container that you find, what is the custom properties value? Is it green? And I get it's not like the if syntax, but it's saying that this condition is true. So font color isn't red or blue or whatever. Then output this stuff, which to me reads like a mixin because it blasts all the different stuff in there. I've used it, not in production, but I'm kind of a fan of the syntax. What did I write here? It would be a lot nicer if we could query any style, not just custom props, right? So you could say color equals white, then set background to black or something like that. You can't do that. Right now it's only custom properties that you can check the value. They are talking about mix-ins in CSS land, like the Sass kind, where you can output a whole chunk of stuff. To me, there's a lot of overlap with this feature and mix-ins. But mix-ins, of course, would be more powerful because a mix-in can take parameters, for example, whereas you can't really do that here. Although I guess you could use multiple of these and say, is font colors green, then do the stuff that you would do if you meant to be passing green as a parameter, and then have a different style query for font color red or whatever else you're going to do. We'll probably still get mix-ins, so not perfect there. But yeah, it's kind of neat. I like that you can use these as little triggers to trigger other styles. Kind of cool. Calc size. Pretty cool, right? If you transition height 0 to height auto without calc size here, that's not going to work. That's not something you've ever been able to do in CSS. It just doesn't know how to do that, even though I find that weird because, of course, it can figure out how tall something is supposed to be with height auto. Clearly it gets to that size one way or another. Why can't you transition it? Well, you just can't, but now you can. So instead of saying height auto, you can say calc size auto, and then it will transition that height between those two things. There is another way to do it, though. You say interpolate size keywords or something on any element above it in the DOM tree, and then you don't have to say calc size. It will just work. I guess both of them are like opt-in to the new behavior. That's kind of good, right? There seems to be more and more opt-ins in CSS. Like, I want to change this behavior, but I need some way to opt into that behavior so it doesn't just change existing behavior. Pretty cool. Naming is a little awkward. Like, what does that mean? What else would I use it for? Why is it calc size? Is it related to calc in some way? No, I don't know. I just don't love the naming, but it's the kind of thing where like, A, it's too late, and B, I don't have a better idea anyway. So I'll just note that it's awkward. It's awkward. There you go. What are your top pain points related to layout? Kind of a big fan of regions, like what if we get text that could flow between grid regions and stuff, that thing that used to exist but doesn't anymore. I still feel like it should, and it's very related to layout, and I hope we get that someday. Even though as CSS is marching towards feature completion, I feel like there's more and more like sentiment that, yeah, like we're rounding the edges on CSS, or what's the metaphor? Rounding the bend and finishing CSS in a way. Not too much more that it would ever need, maybe. Maybe I'll eat my hat. Yeah, some cross-browser pain with grid. I wrote that because that day I was like doing something and somebody's like, this is jerked up in Safari. And I'm like, why? And I looked and I just could not figure it out, why Safari was making this grid weird, like it wasn't full width or something. And it was freaking me out, so I put that, and that's it, I guess. I'm sure I would have more things if I slowed down and think about it a ton, but not sure. Moving on, shapes and graphics. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you're out there, say hi. Weigh in. What's up? Have I used mixed blend mode? Heck yeah, that's like the most Photoshop-y of all the browser features, I feel like, because it's not, sure, there's background blend mode, and then there's other things that do blending, but mixed blend mode just works on anything, like any DOM node. It's just like do the Photoshop thing, smash it, screen it, darken it, whatever, onto the next layer. I feel like sometimes I use it when I know the background of something is white, but don't want it to behave like it's white. You just smash it. I think that's kind of cool. All right, so mixed blend mode, great. It doesn't feel particularly new. I wonder why it's on the survey. Backdrop filter rules. I feel like this is a funny day to bring it up because I feel like it's going to get more and more popular with Apple dropping the liquid glass stuff. There's certainly a lot of stuff that makes backdrop filter blur kind of, that's the Apple aesthetic for some stuff. It has been for a while, but it's going to get even more so, I think. And then it had me wondering, I'm like, what else is there? There's blur, but like, what else? I don't know. All right, moving on. Linear as a function is interesting. Interesting that they're setting it to a custom property, but not using it where you would actually use it. You would actually use it as, a transition timing or animation timing. And it's funny that it makes you think of like, oh, timing linear. I don't like linear timings. I like smooth timings. And linear, the keyword, means like, a very stop, easing that sucks, but linear is almost the opposite of that. It allows you to do like really fancy easings. I have no idea what this one looks like, but it allows you to express easing in a lot more interesting ways than you might expect with lots of power. Lots of bouncing, in other words, is very possible with linear. Great feature. I guess I marked it as heard of it because I don't think I've written one myself or really had like a super strong use case to use it, but I've definitely seen it before. Okay. Intrinsic sizing keywords. Lovely. So it's instead of setting a width that's a percentage or in rems or pixels or anything, that you use keywords instead. Min content, max content, and hilariously fit content. If anybody was listening yesterday to the stream, we messed with fit content, but we messed with it that wasn't used as a keyword. Fit content in the context of a grid template column is actually a function that you pass a value into it, and it was super weird, and I'm not sure I still understand it. But apparently it can be a keyword too when used not in grid template columns, but in something like width or presumably height or other things like that. Yes, I've absolutely used these before. Hard to say. I guess it's positive. I'm very glad that they exist. I used one just today where I was messing with this like almost like a CSS challenge came up where it was a figure And inside the figure can be like an image. I mean, it can be anything, but usually it's an image and then a fig caption. Usually it doesn't have to be that way, but that's the most common use case, I'd say. And let's say the image is 400 pixels wide, which is smaller than a main content area that's 600 pixels wide or something. So you got it like centered in the middle of a blog post. And then you have the caption below it. Well, it makes sense to have the caption wrap where the image wraps, not have the caption be wider than the image. It just looks really weird. It's like fig captions really want to be as wide as the image is, but it's weirdly hard to pull off, because you can say figure be min content sized, and then min content will be as wide as the image is, and then it will wrap. And that's nice. It like kind of solves the problem, except for that most people in their reset style sheet put image max size 100%. And it just blows up the whole concept then. And it ruins it if you have that really common thing in there. So it's like, you kind of want to leave that because you don't want an image actually blowing out layout. So it's tricky. There's lots of solutions. It'll be a good blog post eventually, but I'm just saying that the usage of min content came up immediately just today for me. I feel like it comes up pretty regularly. It could be most useful in grid contexts, I think, when you're trying to smash a column down to the size of the content that it contains. Usually the least useful when it's text, but anyway, I think it's kind of neat. Also, a kind of a neat way to center. Like, can you imagine a headline? In one of the ways you want to center it. Let's say you don't want to use, text align center, because then the element is still as wide as the entire screen is. So if you put border bottom on it, it would stretch the whole width. What if you wanted an underline just underneath it? If it's at hello world, just under hello world, well, you could say h2 width equals max content. That's going to shrink that element. Then the border is only going to be that. And then you put auto margins on the sides and you've kind of solved the problem. That's possible because we have this keyword. Thumbs up, used it, positive experience, love it. All right. Conic gradients, the newest and least useful but most interesting kind of gradient. It's the kind that almost looks like a color picker. There's a center point and the gradient swirls around the outside. Super weird. I put used it because I think I've used it for something like polka dot backgrounds or something like that. It's pretty, I find it niche, but then when I see people's like single div X or something, some kind of cool code pen that's pulling off a look with one element, I feel like this is reached for a lot. And generally when I see it reached for, it's for something that's surprising to me, that I'm like, how did they pull that off? So yeah, I've used it. Not a lot, pretty niche, but it's pretty cool. Offset path, I remember this whole saga. This is a beautiful concept. Oh, they're using the keyword here, which I really like. It's a way of setting an element on a path that you describe. And I feel like 97% of the time, the reason that you'd use offset path is because you're going to animate it along that path. So, oops, streaming is fun. Ooh, you could do like a circle or more likely some SVG-esque path, and then you're going to animate something along it. But it doesn't have to be. That's why they separated offset path and offset distance, because then you're animating the distance along the path to animate it. But you could just be like, for example, setting elements along a circle or setting text along a path in a certain way. It doesn't have to involve animation. So it's nice that those two things are kind of conceptually separated, I think. Pretty sweet. And used. But yeah, the border box keyword means that the path that I want to place things along is just the border of the parent element that I'm on. I think that's nice and useful. So you could set, border radius 50% and then set items along a circle without having to like crack out the circle shape syntax or use SVG or something. You can just use the element that things are already in. That was new to me, like not long ago, that you could do that. I think that's cool. Shape, oh look, it's got the 2025 tag on it for being super new. I hope my love of shape has been well documented. I absolutely love that it's basically like one-to-one with the path syntax and SVG, which is just extraordinarily powerful, except for that path, when it got ported to regular old CSS, had unitless values in it that the browser had no choice but to interpret as pixels. So when you use path instead of shape, it's cool and it's very powerful. It's not resizable, not responsive. Whereas the shape syntax, you can use percentages and viewport units and all sorts of stuff. Excuse me. Shape is the best. It's my favorite feature of the year so far. Did I say anything? Maybe I should put lots of heart emojis. Sweet. What are your top pain points? Oh yeah, it just came up for me while I was just thinking about shape, is that what do you use shape for? Well, they're saying shape as far as a clip path. Well, what else is it for? Well, it could be work with shape outside, the one where you float text along a particular shape. I think that's supposed to work. Does it work? I don't know. And it can also work with offset path too, like we saw above. Can it? Well, it shipped not supporting it, and then later supported it, or Chrome started picking that up too. So it's like niche browser support is interesting. Like to just say, oh, the browser supports shape, that's like not enough information. Where does it support shape where? Interesting stuff, I think. All right, moving on to colors. We'll do a little bit more of this, kind of fun. The color function they're specifically talking about. So yeah, is display P3 colors awesome? Yes. Do I ever use the color function itself? Admittedly, no. It does come up once in a while, like I see Safari shipped display P3 color inputs in HTML, which is really great. And then when you get the value out of it, it comes out like this. You know, I get it. Maybe that was the best way to do it, but it'd be cool to specify, like, can I have it in OKLCH or something, please? That would be neat. I don't hate that this exists. You know, you don't just put display P3 here. You can put any kind of color space that makes sense, like RGB or something. So I think it just has to exist for some reason, but does have weird overlap. I prefer looking at colors in their kind of native function, like OKLCH or HSL or whatever. Accent color, amazing. I just saw a talk that referenced this by Tim Nguyen from Safari on some of the form styling stuff they're doing, and he made a point that accent color actually goes like a really long way in branding land. That if you're like checking out on target.com or something, just a regular old form, but where they set accent color tomato on a form goes a long way in like making the thing look very red like Target is. Kind of cool. It just means like these radio buttons, if we set accent color on those, maybe we can mess with it for a second. This thing, if we set accent color green, is it going to rip green? Are these not native? It kind of looks native. Input. Maybe you have to do it right on the element. Pink. It doesn't want it. Not sure. They look a little not native, maybe. Maybe they're being replaced or something, but usually this would like turn pink essentially with this. It took the value, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but yeah, kind of cool. It's all kinds of stuff, like the little, just extra little stuff in forms for the most part are tinted in that way. Color mix is great. I use it more and more, like my brain just reaches for it more and more. Give it the, oh, did I put never heard of it? Of course I've heard of it. Oh, maybe I clicked it because we were playing with it. Color mix I've definitely used. The number one use case I think is you have an existing color and you're going to just mix it with some degree of transparency or white or black or something to darken or lighten it. Pretty nice that we can do that. But you can mix any two colors together. Just a generic, nice function that exists. I'm very happy that it exists. It's very cool. Oftentimes it's a variable of a color in here, not just a color like that. Cool wide gamut colors, meaning mostly in the display P3 color space, but yeah, lab and LCH and their OK variants of them are just super powerful. They're great. They're not that hard to read. They're easy to adjust. They have access to P3 land, are really just kind of wonderful color syntaxes that is the web is really benefiting from having. In fact, my color picker is now just permanently pegged to OKLCH and I love it. So kind of cool. I suspect we'll just see more and more and more of that over time. I have seen that like hex codes can be, I was feeling that, I had this thought that like hex codes are popular because they're easy to copy and paste. And that DevTools seems to like support them a little better. And like, I don't think all the tooling around the colors and the new formats is as good as tooling that's existed for decades or whatever. But I think that will catch up and we'll start preferring the higher power functions. Relative colors, that's is almost why I like shied away from color mix for a while, because I'm like, ooh, what you really want is relative color syntax. Like, I know color mix can replicate some of that, but this syntax is much cooler and more powerful, because you're like, if what I'm doing is mixing it with black, well, it's the same kind of thing as like taking the lightness and pulling it down. And that's actually like more accurately what I'm doing. And these, when you put the from keyword, that's what kicks off relative colors. Then you say, oh, this is the color I have. And then it gives you these things. It gives you an H, it gives you an S, it gives you an L, and then you can mess with those values. So just putting H is like, just leave the H alone, like essentially return the H untouched. But in this case, take the L and mess with it, lighten it up, multiply it a little bit. So that's just very powerful and very cool. And it's my favorite color syntax. I like it even more than color mix, even though I've softened on color mix. I think it's also useful. Interpolating color spaces, we just saw it up here. Oh, I guess we didn't. You can also do that in relative color syntax and in color mix, where you say in lab. That's what it's saying with interpolation color spaces. It's saying, in what color space do you want to make this gradient happen, for example? But you can do it in other syntaxes as well. So the in keyword is what's doing that, saying like, do this work that I'm asking you to do it in a different color space. Otherwise, it's just going to be sRGB. So there you go. Pretty cool. Color scheme light and dark, also pretty wonderful. Confused me for a long time what that even means. Like, is it, I don't know. What it does mean, though, is that like in this case, it's meaning that both light and dark mode are available. So you should essentially follow that both system modes are allowed. So if I change the system mode on a website that had this set, particularly on probably more like on the HTML element than sub elements, it's almost weird to use it on a sub element like that. That like if it has scroll bars, the scroll bars will be light in light mode if the system matches that light mode. And I can force it. You know, if I just removed dark from this, it'll just have the light scroll bars no matter what my system color theme is. So setting them both means like it's going to respond both ways. But it's also kind of nice that if, you know, you can kind of force this one way or the other. If your website supports like a literal toggle on the thing that says make this website in dark mode, you can kind of force the issue a little bit by saying color scheme dark. And then you're going to get the dark form elements, the dark scroll bars, the dark browser Chrome around it. It's still your job to change all the colors that your website uses, but this, you know, kind of helps it along with the browser Chrome stuff. So yeah, that's very nice to have. Then if you've set this, you get access to this function that says it's a function that's either going to return black or white depending on what mode you're in. In light mode you get black, in dark mode you get white. Really nice, I think. I like it more than I thought I was going to like it. It makes me wish that there was like more of a generic toggle that could do more than two things, but because that's all we have for now, it's actually pretty darn useful. Big fan, kind of love it. Yeah, and I put color as a specific pain point that they were asking for. I put color inputs not supporting specific color function. Like, wouldn't that be nice to write like input type equals color and then pass it some kind of information like color mode equals OKLCH or something. And then when the value of it comes off of it, that it would be in that particular color space. I think that sure would be nice. Apple seems to be leading the charge there. Pretty cool. Let's do one more section and then call it for today, I think. Scroll snapping. Been around a little bit. Absolutely positive experience. I like it more and more because it existed first, and now we're getting all these like scroll buttons and things that are making carousels exist. I certainly think that scroll snapping is kind of like mandatory to make that a good experience, and it looks kind of great. But it's not only for carousel type of things. It can be, you know, I've seen a very chill use case where you set the Y scroll snapping to all the headers on the page, and then it's just kind of, as you're scrolling down, it kind of does a little chill snapping to where a header starts, which is probably where you would have stopped scrolling anywhere. It just does it a little nicer. It's just a chill, nice feature generally of CSS. Pretty niche. I put heard of it on this one because I don't believe that I've used it, but let's say this div with the border around it was a scrolling element. It's like when I scroll down to the bottom of it and the scroll bar is touching the bottom of it. Let's see if I can point to it. Can I get there? And there's a scroll bar there on this element, and I've scrolled all the way down to the bottom of it. As I continue using my mouse scroller or my touchpad or something, it will like propagate the scrolling and then start scrolling the whole page. But you could say, don't do that. Contain that scroll behavior instead. Just stop where you are. Probably useful in niche situations. I cannot say that I've shipped that behavior necessarily. Scroll behavior smooth. Again, that came up when I was looking at carousels, because it just goes so far that you can, click to the next slide and it smoothly scrolls to the next slide. Certainly would look like crap if that didn't exist actually, but you probably want to use it on pretty scoped selectors like a carousel, because putting it on the entire page, some users really don't like. As for example, when you Command F to find in page and look for things, it'll smooth scroll between the results. The browser doesn't have any choice, and it's a little slow. So I put lack of control as a problem with scroll behavior, because it's like, wouldn't it be nice if you could turn it off for find on page or adjust the speed or something like that? So we still got to use it, but in more scoped situations. Scroll bar gutter stable, kind of interesting. When you switch back and forth between a page that scrolls and a page that doesn't, it can look like a little layout shift, even though it's not technically layout shift. It does, with your eyeballs, things move because there's either a scroll bar or there isn't. And scroll bar gutter stable can prevent that. So there's no shift between an area or a page that has a scroll bar that doesn't. But what it does is it just paints like an area where the scroll bar would be. So there's kind of some centering issues and some aesthetics issues that come up with it. So I end up liking it as a concept, but mostly being like, oh, but I don't actually like it in practice. I don't like the little space that it leaves and the centering problems that it has. View transitions, we probably talked about a ton, or at least I've thought about a ton, is an amazing API. I like they're showing off how the control of view transitions expresses itself in CSS, meaning you don't even have to write any of this stuff to get view transitions, but if you want to and target specific things and how they move in view transition, you can, and I think that's very powerful and very cool. I don't have much more to say about that. It's funny thinking of all the different, there's old and new, but there's group, and there's all kinds of different aspects of this that I do find a little hard to wrap my mind around sometimes, especially in the moment, right when you need it. Scroll-driven animations, just played with them yesterday again. I really was just playing, but when you set a scroll timeline, what you're saying is give me access to being able to make the scrolling of this element be basically the keyframe timeline of this element. So as this scrolls from 0 to 100, the keyframe that you're applying here is actually the timeline, not amount of time, the scroll progress, because it's a scroll timeline. Pretty cool. It's actually pretty easy to use. So in this case, it's this bar is just getting bigger as the page is scrolled down. Basically, in these lines of code right here, I've built a reading progress indicator, which is pretty awesome. Discrete properties, very powerful, also has very weird naming. This is what they're talking about, basically these two or these three, I guess. I don't know why they're setting it so many times. Oh, it's because this property needs allowed discrete and this property needs allowed discrete. Allowed discrete means that normally, if you were to transition an element from display none to display block, it goes immediately to block. It doesn't wait for the transition to end and then go to block, or it's more likely the other way around, from block to none. It just immediately turns to none, and then your cool opacity transition cannot be seen. Well, allow discrete changes that. It says, I'll let the opacity finish after a second, and then I'll change the display to none, which is great. Now you can fade out an element and then display none in, which takes it out of the accessibility tree and all that, which is nice. It's using overlay, because overlay is matching the backdrop, so you can fade out the backdrop as well behind a dialogue. So it's nice that we can do that. Again, the weirdest name ever. Allow discrete does not describe that behavior to be particularly well. Scroll state queries. I don't know what those are, really. Honestly, I'm not even going to try to describe it. It's on my list to figure out and talk about. Pretty cool. CSS carousels I have played with, and we've used them on this very stream. a couple weeks ago, or just rocked in a pretty simple scroller. But yeah, it's like any scrollable area, you could just put a button that controls that scrolling on there, and if it scrolls, these buttons show up. That just is mind-blowingly weird to me that you can do that in CSS, but it works fine. Pretty cool. I put connection to invokers because you're like, well, it has nothing to do with these specifically. I just mean like, what if you had those HTML... I feel like I can't even describe it, but invokers are those things like it's a button that can open a dialog and you are controlling it through the attributes on the button itself. Like maybe there's a CSS way to like make those connections instead of all HTML attributes. I'm not sure, but maybe. Pretty cool. Well, let's do the rest of this later. My voice is starting to go on me, but I just think this is like a great excuse to just like talk about CSS very generically and quickly, and it's fun. So we'll do it again.